All right, welcome back. More Hollow Knight. This is episode 9, getting underway. And last time we left off with something of a cliffhanger. We adventured deep out into the Kingdom's Edge, into the Grave of Ash, which, with the help of Bard Dune, we learned was the final resting place of an ancient worm, a giant serpent. And having done battle for a second time with Hornet, proven our mettle, we acquired the King's Brand, which essentially marked us as the ruler of Hallow Nest. All right, so a donation fountain to the old king of Hallow Nest, referred to as the Pale King. And notice the statue, a little bit serpent-like in its body, and then at the top, you know, the head, the crown, whatnot. So now we have a name to go with the figure of the former king of Hallow Nest. The Pale King is what he was called. And as for the donation fountain, basically you drop 3,000 GON and you get a vessel fragment in return. You can drop various amounts in at different times throughout the game, but it just keeps a total of how much you've put in there. I like to do it all at once. And with that, we're at 1 of 3 on our next vessel fragment. And down here, you remember when we were here before, this strange message, which we'll read again, and then a locked door bearing the mark, which we know now is the King's Brand, and accordingly, it should open for us. Okay, very spooky, Devatron. A new area called the Abyss. And some new black, ghosty little critters. Those are called siblings. Now, why they're called siblings, you'll just have to wait. But very spooky down here indeed. All right, Abyss Shriek, Devatron. The upgrade to the upward pointing Howling Wraith spell. Let's give it a try here. Oh yeah, big time. Doesn't look like much, but that spell now does a lot more damage, and with that we have all the upgrades for all the spells, so we are officially a spell build. So keep in mind the refuse and the regret of its creation down here, and all the broken masks and kind of bodies of, the failed versions of the pure vessel, which we know is most likely the Hollow Knight. Now, as for these little black swirly tendrils, those are called void tendrils, and they will do damage to you. And the other thing is, notice these siblings, when you hit them with the nail, they don't give you soul. Watch our soul meter. See that? So they are not rewarding any soul when you hit them like a normal creature. And also they, are black and inky, and when you hit them and when they die, they emit a black inky ooze. So now we have ourselves, the collector, and these creatures, which are called siblings, keep in mind, that are the only creatures in the game that emit this black color. And we also know that the kind of, mini-armed flailing entity down in the pools down there that we just passed are called void tendrils. So it looks like we might finally have a name for this black inky substance, and that would be void. Okay, so we flip this switch and it fills this container with lumaflies. And then notice there's a big curved mirror to the left of the container, which now reflects that light down and to the right. Okay, and as we leave this light tower, lighthouse, notice now that that light is shining, there are no more siblings around attacking us. And over here you can clearly see the beam of light shining down and to the right. Now what that has done, in addition to clearing out the siblings, is you see this big chasm of void here. If the light weren't there, then a bunch of void tendrils would just reach up and ensnare us and prevent us from crossing that chasm. And here, an upgrade for our Mothwing cloak, the Shade Cloak. What this does is it kind of turns us into shade, just ethereal form, so that we can dash through enemies without taking damage. So very helpful. You see, we can use it right away here on these void tendrils. And you'll notice that we kind of turn all black when we do it. And then this little black ball kind of absorbs back into us. That lets us know it's ready. See, it's on a cooldown. You can't just forever spam dash and never take damage. And here, an imprint of Abyss given form. This gives a journal entry for a void tendril, which, like other entries in the journal, you couldn't get any other way because you can't kill a void tendril.
La venido.
Okay, so some very interesting, although not necessarily very comforting, words from Hornet. Having faced the place of our birth, we now drape ourselves in the substance of its shadow, meaning the shade cloak and void. So there it is. Now we know, Devatron. We are, in fact, a creation of void. We now know why the little void ghosts down there are called siblings, because they are, in fact, our siblings. And like them, our little guy was cast off as one of the failed attempts at creating the pure vessel, which, as we've theorized, is the Hollow Knight up there in the Temple of the Black Egg. So, are we more than void? Why aren't we just a little ghost flying around down there? We don't know all of that yet, but nonetheless, we learned what we are and where we came from. All right, and here you can see our map updated with the abyss and the details of that locale added in. Not enough for a map break or anything, but I did want to show you the update. And up here you can see we've taken the stag to Queen Station. And because we now have the shade cloak, which means we can dash through those, void walls and other things, it means that finally, at long last, we'll be able to get the map for Fog Canyon.
Déjennos escuchen.
Okay, so finally the map for Fog Canyon. We'll have a look at it shortly. And by my accounting, you need monarch wings to get up to this little ledge that I'm on right now. And you also need the shade cloak, right, in order to pass through those void walls in order to even get into this section where Cornifer is. And of course, you can't get any of those items without having dash, and you probably, and I think you also are going to need mantis claw. So, that's a lot of heavy-duty prerequisites just to get at a map for an area that most people come to, pretty quickly. Usually by, for us it was episode 2. And it's pretty much where you come after Green Path, which is the only place you can go after the Forgotten Crossroads. So, again, many people are upset about that. They feel like it's unnecessarily, cruel or harsh to waste people's time and drive them crazy trying to get to the map. when in fact you have to go through, quite a bit of the game before you can have the tools and get to this area. But that's the way they did it, and that's what we have to deal with. I'm just glad that we finally have it and we can move on. Okay, so a tricky little section of the map to get at that hidden relic, and I nearly had it perfectly. It's just that last jump, I clipped the edge of that little ledge, which caused me to kind of recoil up and left into that Uma, and then taking damage from it caused me to recoil back to the right, and then I hit the vines, so I lost 2 lives out of it, but no big deal. We got through it. We got our relic.
Manama to Churo namen.
Okay, so we've arrived at the teacher's archives. This is going to be the location of Monomon the teacher, one of the 3 dreamers. And I'm guessing it's no coincidence that we met Quarrel outside. And I don't know if you've noticed thus far, but that mask that he wears on top of his head, kind of like a hat, it's actually the same mask that Monomon the teacher wears. Okay, and Shaman Stone, Spell Twister, and Fluke Nest, you can bet that there's going to be a boss fight coming up. And at long last, here we can see the Fog Canyon into the world map view of things. You can finally see how it connects to all these other areas. And, we've passed through it here and there, but it's just nice visually to see it all drawn in and connected. And right in the middle where the Mask of the Dreamer is, you can see that's where we are, the teacher's archives. So let's go see if we can find this dreamer, and if so, what Monomon is all about.
Tumek. Kasa. Tumek. Dekum. Seruna Serake. Dekum. Seruna Serake. Dekum. Nekino, Nekino. Kasara.
All right, so Umu, a giant electrical jellyfish boss, very similar to the other inhabitants here in Fog Canyon, and he's actually immune to damage, and the only time you can hit him is when Coral comes to your aid and stuns it. So very interesting that Coral showed up to help out, and you can't beat him without his help. Now here, this container with acid inside and these all caps messages, I have a guess as to what they are. They're a little incoherent, kind of gibberish like, but first let's see what's in this big tank and deal with it, and then we'll talk about the little tanks.
Se chiama, Citurino. Kalakma.
Bello ba Nakoden. Dos Dakodango.
Okay, so our first dreamer down, and kind of a lot to take in. And there's a good bit I want to talk about. Before I launch into it all, up here, there's going to be a journal entry for the charged Lumafly. Another creature that, because you can't kill it, that's the only way to get the journal entry. And then second, another one of these tanks. And my idea about what these tanks are, now that we talked to Quarrel, he mentioned that Monomon was trying to, kind of archive a lot of the thoughts and memories and whatnot. And I think that these tanks and all this acid water and stuff were Monomon's attempt to keep track of history and ideas and whatnot. Now, as for the technology and how does it work, and, I mean, who knows? But this is called, the teacher's archives, and Monomon was the teacher. So that's my best guess for what those tanks are and all that gibberish is. Now, as for the encounter with the dreamer herself, notice that before we entered the dream, we spoke with Quirrell, and he removed Monomon's mask that, as I had mentioned earlier, he was kind of wearing as a hat, and then it sort of dissolved. It looked like soul dissolving away from the mask and being absorbed by Monomon. Now, this didn't necessarily wake her up. She was still asleep in the tank, but it allowed us to dream nail her and enter her dream. And then once in the dream, we were able to destroy it, and along with it, her back here in the real world. And of course, in doing so, we then got the cutscene that showed that Monomon's seal on the door to the Temple of the Black Egg, where the Hollow Knight is now extinguished. So, presumably, the idea is to do this for the other two dreamers as well, and extinguish all the seals on the door to the Temple of the Black Egg, and then enter it and figure out what in the world is going on in there with the Hollow Knight and this orange light stuff, etc., etc. Now, the only other thing I want to bring to your attention with regard to Monomon and this dreamer encounter is Quirrell. Now, admittedly, we don't know much about Quirrell, and even Quirrell himself doesn't seem to know much about Quirrell, right? He doesn't seem to have a lot of memory of who he was or how he got here or what his relation to Monomon was, but rather he just seems to have been called to action, and whenever things have needed to be done in relation to some kind of background master plan with him and Monomon, then he's gotten it done. He's been in the right place and done whatever has needed to be done. Now, it's not my intention to try and explain whatever this master plan was between Quirrell and Monomon. Rather, all I want to do is point out that Monomon had an outside helper in Quirrell, right? An external agent who aided Monomon in whatever way that Monomon needed to be aided, okay? In becoming a dreamer and staying a dreamer, or in our case, in no longer being a dreamer anymore. And it's my belief that, and we're starting to kind of get into my grand theory of things, it's my belief that each of the three dreamers has an agent. So that remains to be seen, but for now, I wanted to point out that Quirrell does seem to have acted in that capacity for Monomon. Okay, so this has been an incredibly dangerous gauntlet through exploding eggs and Umas and everything. But look at our reward, a bonus charm notch. Super awesome, and that's going to be very helpful. Now, I was supposed to do this earlier when we were in this part of the Fog Canyon, but I forgot. So what I did is I set a dream gate here once we were done with the archives, and then I went back and got it, and now we gated back. And actually, in retrospect, with the exception of having to backtrack and get to that part again, I kind of like gating out of there. It's definitely less dangerous to gate out once you get the charm notch. So I think 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But either way, we got our bonus charm notch, and it appears we're heading back into the Queen's Gardens. Okay, a couple things you may have noticed since re-entering the Queen's Gardens. All of a sudden, my Shade Soul spell isn't one-shotting anything, but at the same time, Great Slash is. So what's going on? Well, as you may have just noticed there as I undid those charms, the last time I charmed up, I forgot to put Shaman Stone in, so my spells weren't doing that much damage. Now, as for Great Slash doing more damage than it used to, that's because we have an upgraded nail, remember? So I go ahead and recharm, get Shaman Stone back in there, and I decided that, because we have such a good nail now, I'll go ahead and put in Nail Master's Glory so that we can charge up those nail art attacks even quicker and have a little fun with them. Okay, and as you can see now, no problem with the Shade Soul. Everything's dying in one shot. And bam! There's a nice Great Slash. It may have technically been a dash slash Devatron because I did jump and dash into that attack. But like I said earlier, I've never really noticed the difference between the two. But either way, a nice one-shot on one of those pesky Mantis Petras. All right, so quite a nice handling of what's otherwise a pretty tough ambush, Mantis Traders, Mantis Petras, and several of the little spiny husks. And what I like about that is you're seeing we're not just a one-trick pony anymore. Even though I still stand by the spell build and I prefer to use spells, you're noticing that I'm throwing in some nail arts, especially now that we have Nail Master's Glory. And, our guy is really coming into his own and not just having a lot of tools, but using them and using them effectively. Okay, you'll notice right here I go ahead and set our Dream Gate. It's kind of a fork, right? You can go left or right. And actually, once you go right, as you'll see, there's another fork up here. So by putting it where I did, we'll be able to go right, do one fork, and then gate back, and go right again, do the other, and then gate back again, and then do the left. So it's kind of like a three-way fork, even though the next fork isn't, until past this screen. But that's why I put it there. All right, so some nice platforming there. And here you see the next fork. I can go left or up. So this time we're going to go up, and then we'll gate back, do it all again, and then we'll go left next time. And as for the platforming, Queen's Gardens is just one of those really tough zones, maybe more than any of the others. You have to do a lot of tricky platforming with those collapsing ledges, and there's, vines everywhere with these spikes on them and stuff. And oftentimes you have to do combat and, kind of negotiate and manage all these platforming obstacles. So it's definitely a pretty advanced zone and one of the more challenging ones to navigate. Okay, this next bit here, it's some pretty straightforward platforming. It's not hard at all. But for some reason, my brain just gets dyslexic for like 30 seconds, and it confuses the dash button with the spell button. So I keep wanting to cast a spell, but you see there, I dash at the enemy instead. So I'm a little bit sloppy through here. Otherwise, it's not really hard at all. And I get into a little bit more trouble up here on the next moss flies, but otherwise we get through it. It's not too bad. Okay, notice as we walk in here it says green path. And I'm going to open the map and show you exactly where we are. We are indeed back in green path. You see in the bottom left where it says Queen's Gardens, there's our little guy. We're in this little section where right here, that thing was blocking us. And remember that? That was the mossy tablet that had a message on it that indicated that there were other groups in this area before the folks of Hallownest. So you remember this being here several episodes ago. It just so happens that the Whispering Root was on the other side of that blocked passageway, and we weren't able to get at it until now because we're coming from the other direction, from Queen's Gardens. So that's all. I just wanted to give you a heads up that that's where we are. I could have saved this area until now when we were coming from that direction, so I wouldn't have to have been here twice. But I don't know if you remember, when we were here the first time, one of the big things we got out of here was a vessel fragment. So having that sooner than later, I think, was the best call, even though it meant we were going to have to come back here now and do a little repeat footage as we get the Whispering Root. Oh, yeah, big time. Simultaneous killing blow, Devatron. But unfortunately, poor Cloth, she finally overcame her fear and cowardice, came to our aid, helped us defeat the evil traitor lord, but died in the process. So, a moment of silence for poor Cloth. And as for the traitor lord, remember that was the Mantis who broke off from the Mantis lords and Mantis village and came to the Queen's Gardens to try to embrace the orange light and accept its gifts.
Hui Zuma Gong Gong. Byakura. Tromenba. Tromenba. Pianeros.
All right, so the White Lady, a very interesting character indeed. And notice she wasn't really bug-like. She was more like a tree. See all these white roots everywhere, and they protrude to the outside here of her kind of tree-like chamber. And being buried deep here within the Queen's Gardens, she is likely the Queen of Hallownest. Okay, so on the one hand, it seems a little harsh to dream nail Cloth there and permanently, put her to rest. But I felt like she was fulfilled. She had finally found purpose and then fulfilled that purpose and conquered her cowardice and her fear. So I felt like she deserved to be sent on her way so that she could rest forever in peace. Okay, getting back to the White Lady, there's quite a bit of corroboration. The Hollow Knight is the pure vessel. She's sensing that the Hollow Knight is starting to crack and the infection is once again seeping out. And it's falling on us, we learn, to do one of two things. Either nothing and let the orange light infection overrun everything, or as she asked, what she would prefer is to replace the Hollow Knight. So at long last, we kind of have figured out our role and our purpose. in the story of Hollow Nest, and that is to become the next Hollow Knight. Now, to help us with this task, she gave us one half of a charm, just called the White Fragment, and it's half of what is called the King Soul. So we need to find the other half and complete the charm, and then see what that's all about. Now, the Queen of Hollow Nest would have been kind of like the wife of the King of Hollow Nest, or the Pale King, or perhaps before he became the Pale King, the Worm. And she mentions when she's talking about a gendered child that she never begrudged the Worm's dalliance as bargain, meaning the Worm's dalliance with whoever the mother of the gendered child was. Furthermore, she says that the gendered child is a striking reflection of her mother. So all of this points to the fact that the Worm or the Pale King had some kind of affair with another, and the gendered child, whoever that is, was the product of that dalliance, as she called it. Now, the White Lady mentions that we've already met this gendered child, and although we haven't met anybody who is a striking reflection of anybody else, if her father is in fact the Pale King or the Worm, there's a good chance that she's something of a sibling to us, right? Now, we already know that of the females out there, there's Hornet, right? And when we came back up from the abyss, and she talked to us about, draping ourselves in the substance of the shadow of our birthplace, etc., etc., she also said something else. She said that you and I are born of the same stuff, although she lacks that crucial emptiness that we have. So, odds are that Hornet is the gendered child, and we'll have to be on the lookout for any other clues of that, especially if we come across a female character that could be her mother who looks exactly like her. So the only other thing I want to throw out, at least right now, with regard to the White Lady, is the fact that she is a very tree-like NPC. She represents bark and roots and wood. She's not a bug, and she's not magic. And she is white, so what are the white things in the game that we know about? Well, we have soul, which tends to be related to magic, and my guess is that relates more to the Pale King, because the Worm is kind of the magical being in all this, right? But the other white things that aren't magic are masks. And if you think about it, the way the life system works in this game, it's kind of like bark on a tree, If you peel off bark from a tree, you haven't killed it yet, but you have removed a little bit of its life, and if you keep peeling it off, eventually you'll get to its core, and then, it'll die. That's kind of like our masks, Not to mention that masks could be made out of wood, right? We find these mask fragments in the world, and then when we have enough, we put them together, and now we have a full mask, which is like another layer of bark. It's another layer of life and protection. So I'm guessing that the Worm, or the Pale King's attempt at order, in contrast to just the wild orange light, was to combine various elements of nature, protective bark with his sort of magic soul, and also the void and whatever it can bring to the table, and not really create but augment existing bug life so that it would be able to flourish. It could live longer, it could think, it could reason, and it could create, and the result would be flourishing and advancement and progress. Okay, so quite the roly-poly dream warrior, Marmu. And here it says, protector of leaf and root. Further indication that the White Lady is a tree-like entity. Not a very hard fight there, but just weird. I mean, you can't ever really predict where she's going to be or when she's going to attack. So it's not that hard, but you do have to do your best not to get bowled over, right? And remember, this was our first Dream Warrior since upgrading the nail, and you could see just how long it took compared to some of our first Dream Warriors where we just blasted them. Okay, we're coming up on the end of the episode, and we got a nice shot of the map, so let's do a quick map break. I'm going to start here in Queen Station. This is after we had visited the Abyss and then taken the stag here. So we came up through here and went this way in the Fog Canyon, and right here there was that void wall. And now that we have the shade cloak that we got down in the Abyss, we were able to dash through it. And then up in here we found Cornifer and got the map for Fog Canyon. And then we headed over this way and up, found a hidden relic in that tough little area up there. And then from there went back down and into the teacher's archives, and we did Monomon the Dreamer. Okay. We also rescued a grub up here, I believe. After the archives, I realized I needed to backtrack and come up into this room, which had all those exploding eggs and whatnot. Tough room, but we got our bonus charm notch. And then from there, we gated back to right outside the teacher's archives where we had set our dream gate. Okay, cleaning that up. From there, we made our way just down and left into the Queen's Gardens. And then I had to stop at this bench and recharm because I had forgotten Shaman Stone. And then we made our way down into here. And we went through this part of the Queen's Gardens for the first time. It was, you know, just some platforming, some enemies, no big deal. Unlocked this bench and then made our way up and eventually set our dream gate. It's actually more about right here. Remember I said there was a way to go left, a way to go right, and the way to go right had another fork on it, which is right here. So we went up here, did this platforming bit. The first time we came up here and rescued the grub there, and then went right back into the green path here to do a whispering root. So we did all that, and then we dream gated back to our gate here, cleaning that up. And then the second time, remember, we went back the way we came, but instead of going up this time, we went left and made our way up over here. And this is where the White Lady was. And then once we were done talking to her, we gated again back to our dream gate. And from there, we went left. And this was just a series of, you know, kind of wandering around. We made our way up here, rescued a grub, and this is the whole time I was talking about White Lady. So I kind of didn't, you know, talk a lot about what we were passing through. It was just a lot of, you know, trash mobs, hidden relic, etc. But eventually down into here, we stopped at the bench first, recharmed, then stepped back in, and then we fought Marmu, the Dream Warrior, and now we're here at the bench. So again, wanted to keep it brief, but it can get confusing in this area, especially with dream gating and going left at the fork this time, right at the fork the next time, etc., etc. So wanted to throw that in and then wrap up the episode from here. All right, this episode isn't over yet, Devitron. It looks like the last stag has remembered the location of the stag nest. So let's head out there, and then we'll wrap up the episode after that. All right, kind of sad seeing all these dead stags everywhere, but nice to get 2 of 3 on our vessel fragments. So just one more of those, and we'll have all the vessel fragments in the game, which will put us at 3 bonus soul reservoirs. Now here I step out just to show you where we're at, right? And it's the Howling Cliffs. So you can kind of see on the map, there's our little guy. I just wanted to give you visually the location of the stag nest. Okay, so perhaps there's hope after all, Devitron. A broken egg, it is empty. Now that could mean that all the eggs are broken and all the stags are dead, but it might just mean that at least one of the stags hatched and has just left the stag nest. So I want you to pay attention when we talk to the stag again. Toward the end, his name changes in the lower left. And with that, the last stag is now just an old stag, and a glimmer of hope that he'll meet his kin again someday. And with that, we'll wrap up the episode. Hope you're enjoying Hollow Knight. We'll see you in the next episode.